It is estimated that a quarter of Americans will go into debt during the holidays, but financial counselor and head of 1428 Financial Wellness, Dondrea Brown, says that with planning, anyone can enjoy the holidays without worrying about how to pay for it all. Recently, I sat down with Dondrea to learn more. With me today is Dondrea Brown with 1428 Financial Wellness, a financial literacy company that helps to educate on basic principles of money management. Welcome, Dondrea. We're so happy to have you here today.
Thank you, Joanne.
I was reading a little bit about your background, but it was kind of interesting in how you got into financial literacy. Could you tell us a little bit more?
Yeah, so for me, I really wasn't as concerned about finances growing up because I never really knew what money looked like, what it really was. My mother had worked extremely hard, and we really didn't have conversations about money. And then I went to college. And in going to college, I accumulated a lot of student loan debt, which represents a lot of Americans today with student loan debt. And in order to get out of those, I really needed to educate myself. So what I did was I started to research information of how to get out of debt, how to manage money, how to spend. And I was currently working on my PhD at the time as well, and I was really intrigued on how to help individuals and groups get out of debt. So what I really started to explore was how can I utilize information and principles that I've applied to myself to help others and other groups, which led to 1428 Financial Wellness. 1428 Financial Wellness is named after the scripture Luke 14:28 because I believe counting the cost is extremely important.
So, and speaking, and there's so many different things we could talk about in financial planning, but this being the holidays, and it's kind of the big pressure on, and a lot of people actually end up going into debt. Out of 5 people, 2 have that stress or pressure of literally, overspending their budgets, and the vast majority, over almost half of middle America, will actually have that stress, that feeling like they have to buy. What kind of thoughts or tips do you have for people?
Yeah, so Joanne, you are very correct in this being the season not only to be jolly, but to go into debt, right? So the average American will spend about $1,000 plus going into debt, just consuming products and things. So some of the things that I love to inform individuals about is the 3 Ps: plan, prioritize, and pay. So to plan, and these all will help you stay out of debt. So when you think about planning, it's the Christmas list 2.0. So typically when we create a list or a Christmas list, we write down all of the gifts that we want to give or purchase for someone. But I encourage people to take it a step further and really look at your income as well. So while you're creating a list of things you want to spend, also add to that list how much you can afford to spend. So what is your income for those? And then prioritize. Once you see that list, be very critical. Are there any individuals that were naughty on that list, right? Or nice? But really taking an intentional look to see how you can give intentional gifts. One popular gift to give individuals that lasts a very long time is a picture frame, right? It doesn't cost a lot. So some individuals may need to get picture frames. I know my dad, one time he wanted some socks for Christmas. I assumed he wanted something that was really expensive, so I was about to go and purchase something really expensive, but he was like, no, son, just get me some socks, right? Some $5 socks. So that's another thing when you think about priorities, right? Really look at who can get a high-end purchase or who can get something that you create, right? Something you take time to draw. I have kids myself, and they love to make gifts. I give it to my family all the time. And then the last piece is pay. Like pay cash. It's very easy to swipe a card, right? But when you create your gift, your list, you prioritize that list, and then you use cash to pay for those items. Once you're out of cash, right, then that's a Merry Christmas for you, right? And you're not adding debt onto your Christmas list, which has to roll into the following year. Because we know that when debt goes into the following year, it typically takes about 4 months plus to pay it off when we consider the interest rates. And the interest rates are typically around 24%. So you're looking at an expenditure that can last for about a year and trying to pay it off.
Well, and you bring up a good point. You mentioned having kids, and one of the things everybody always talks about is create realistic expectations. And how do you do that with a kid who's like 4 or 5 years old? And oh wow, what do you say?
So I love my kids because this is the best time to really teach them about money. One of the things I always tell my kids is this a need or is it a want?
Oh my gosh, my mom grew up I'm not kidding, my mom grew up she was a depression child, and that was something that her father would always say to her, is this a need or is this a want? And she would have to go home and think about it before they would go back and purchase the item.
Yes, the 24-hour rule is also something that you can use. So for my kids specifically, they're my accountability partners, because sometimes I'll go into the store and they'll say, Daddy, is that a need or is it a want? Right? So when you set realistic expectations, especially with your kids, you talk to them about, do we need this doll, right? Or do we need this phone or this electronic? And that's really going to help them develop healthy financial behavior as they get older. So that's one good way to set a realistic expectation.
And lastly, I guess the other thing I want to talk about too is that, as you're walking around, you can't help but see all the wonderful charities, the Angel Tree and the Santa Claus Girls and the people out with the buckets. But, that too can start to add up, and when you start putting the money in the bucket. Thoughts on giving as well? I mean, that's also an important part of the holiday.
So giving is an extremely important part of the holiday, as the holiday season really puts you in position to recognize, right, place value on, but also give and purposefully. So I always tell people your budget will help you set boundaries about your spending. So if you want to give, add it to your budget. This year or this season, I'm going to give $100 because that is a need for me. And then when you're building your budget, if there are additional pieces or additional things that you're prioritizing, those might be wants. But when you go to a charity, just know that you have to place limits on yourself, because again, you're trying to adopt really healthy financial behavior so that eventually you can give more next year, or you can give additional the following year.
Great. Well, Dondrea, I really appreciate you being here today and talking a little bit to us about the holiday finances, and I really hope we can have you come back and talk some more. But before we leave, can you tell us if people want to get more information about 1428, where to go?
Yes. So if you want to get more information about 1428, you can go to www.1428fw.com.